Good morning, people. Once again, it is early. And for those of you who have been watching my videos, you are probably aware that I am not a morning person, right? Which is interesting because I could just do this video at a later hour and avoid that entire problem. But I find that I do my best quiet time type of work in the morning, right? So like my God time, my study time, my reading time, that kind of thing works really well for me in the morning. And as I'm talking to God or reading a book or studying or whatever I'm doing, there are always thoughts that I feel like I'd like to share. So thus you get a morning video. So this video is going to be focused on what God is currently dealing with me about. Right? All my videos are really about what God is currently dealing with me about, but never mind that. This one is about being a martyr, right? So I've had some things in my life in the last few months, more than one actually, that God has reminded me that I did not call you to be a martyr. Let me just back up for just a second. Let me just say that, again, for those of you who watch my videos, you know that I am deeply spiritual, right? Like I love God. All things are about God. And I reference God in almost every video. But I also want to mention the fact that if you are not spiritual, right? Like if you are not a Jesus freak, that's okay, right? Like, do you, I think that you can gain something from my videos or other people's videos that happen to be spiritual when they have a practical aspect to them. So most of my evaluating my life process is related to God and God directing my path and ordering my steps, or me doing my best to try to be obedient, because it doesn't always happen that way. But the way I determine where to go, when to go, how far to go, how fast, how slow, is all connected to God. But you can make those decisions and figure out a process for evaluating how you will move without being godly. Now, I want to be clear that I don't think it's the same, right? Like, there's a reason why I use God, because me in my own strength, well, I'm slow, right? Like, I don't make the best choices on my own. But I do think that there are systems and things that we can do to help improve our decision making, even if we're not deeply spiritual. Not the same, right? I want to emphasize that. How I make my decisions without God and with it is different. But I just want to remind people that figure out the process that works for you, right? Anyway, I shall move on. So being a martyr, right? So I went to God asking him about a specific thing, right? Should I do this thing? Should I not do this thing? And his response was just the word martyr, right? So then I had to think about, well, what is a martyr? So I thought about it and I'm like, okay, a martyr is someone who sacrifices for what they believe in. Okay. Right? So then I had to go to God again and say, okay, well, help me understand the difference between being a martyr and just regular, every normal day sacrifice. Because everything requires sacrifice, right? If I get into a relationship with someone, there's sacrifice. If I decide I'm going to build a business, there's sacrifice. If I'm going to raise children, if I'm going to go on a diet, like if I'm going to buy a house, it doesn't really matter what it is. They all come with sacrifice. So I was like, okay, help me understand the difference there. And his response was, a martyr is someone who sacrifices to the degree that it harms themselves. And I'm like, okay, I get that. So because God has me in a season where He is teaching me and reminding me that I did not call you to be a martyr, right? Like, I did not call you to sacrifice to the degree that it harms yourself. And one of the things that I've had to do in this season is figure out what question I need to ask myself in order to determine if I'm being a martyr, right? So He's dealing with me about being a martyr because it's an issue for me, right? So because it's an issue for me, it shows up in a lot of different ways in my life. And so now, because this is the season that I'm in, I've been asking myself, okay, Lachelle, before you get into this relationship or involve yourself in this new venture or whatever you're connecting yourself to, can you handle it, right? If God has not called you to be a martyr, then you really need to be intentional about evaluating what you get yourself involved in. But one of the things that I've learned, right, is I got to stop asking myself, can I handle it? That's not the right question. Because when I ask myself, can I handle it? The answer is always yes, right? Which may or may not be accurate, but that's how I respond, right? When I think about, well, can you deal with this? Absolutely. Can you deal with that? Yes, you can. And that's in essence what God is saying. Stop doing that, right? Like, stop saying that you can handle all of these things that I didn't call you to handle, and technically you really can't handle, right? Like, you can say you can handle it, but then you get into the middle of it and you're emotional and you're breaking down and you're stressed out. And the truth is, right, and this is where you got to catch it, right? I can say that I can handle this, this, and this, but if it's stressing me out or overwhelming me or causing some kind of issue, then is that really handling it? Let me just think about that for a second. So I've learned to change my question, right? It is not a matter of whether I can handle it, because the truth is I can handle a lot of shit, right? The more important question for me is, how is this thing going to impact you, right? Like, if you get yourself involved in this situation, right? This new business venture, this new relationship, this whatever it is that I'm trying to do, how is it going to affect you? How is it going to impact you? That's the thing that I have to pay attention to, because I did not call you to be a martyr, right? So I share that because I want you to also figure out what the right question is for you. I also share it because I think it's important for you to know what season that you're in, because seasons change, right? And what I can handle in one season, I cannot handle in another. But I also share it because in one particular situation that I'm going through, if I decide to say no, right, which is an issue that so many of us have, is our ability to say no. We struggle with that, and we struggle with our ability to say no and not feel bad about it. But in this one situation, I don't want to do it, and I also don't think I can handle it, and I don't think it's the season for it. But I know it's going to hurt the other person when I say no, right? And so that's the process that I'm working through now, is getting okay with putting me first. And listen, that is no small task, right? Like, when you start talking about people who you love and care about, and putting yourself above those people, it takes work to do that, right? Especially as women, we tend to just, we love, like, right? Like, that's the essence of love, is doing things for my children and my significant other and my mother and, those people in my circle, my friends. But it's a very slippery slope, and you have to pay very close attention to what matters to you. All of my videos are about being intentional and really ongoing evaluation and monitoring yourself. And if there's one thing that we have to learn to do and continue to monitor ourselves as women specifically, but people, I think people do this as well. Not just women. It's learning positive selfishness, right? Like learning to put ourselves first, because that's what any goal, maybe not any goal, but most goals that you're going to go after require that you have such tenacity and such get up and go, for lack of a better word, that you have to put you first. You have to put what you're working on first, the goals you have first. Everyone is not going to understand that, and you have to have enough tenacity to push through. So, those are my thoughts about being a martyr. Hope you're figuring out what season you're in and what lens you should be viewing things through. Have a great day. Peace.